Welcome to this final episode of Genealogy for Kids, Finding the Right Stuff. I'm Trainer Lori. We learned about a person's paper trail in the last session. Do you remember that a paper trail is all the official and non-official documents about and by a person that contains data we need? When you start gathering facts from the paper trail, often you have to put on your detective hat and evaluate whether it's correct or not. This is called making a deduction. To be really good at genealogy, there are 4 steps you should follow to make a good deduction. These steps are known as the genealogical proof standard. Let's see what they are. First, to make sure it's a good deduction, conduct a thorough search. That means look at as many documents as you can find. For example, instead of just looking at one census record, you look at all that are available for that person. Remember, they come out every 10 years. 2. Note your sources. Have you ever made a statement and someone says to you, "Prove it"? You know what that means, right? Where did that information come from? For example, was it somebody else's family tree? Did they list any sources? If not, don't use it. If you do, you're just playing telephone. Remember that game? Instead, look for proof of birth or proof of marriage, like a government document. That's a good source, so write it down. Make note of it so others can understand. Number 3, review the information and discard as needed. Let's say you find 3 census records for the same family that are all from Ohio. Then you find a person with the same name in California with a different family for 2 of those years. You should double check to ensure it is the same person and not just someone with the same name. Seldom will a person be listed in 2 censuses the same year. And finally, number 4, make an informed conclusion. If you use steps 1 through 3, then your deduction is informed and you can make a conclusion that you can feel confident about. Ready to start deducing? We are going to find Franklin. We are going to look at his paper trail, starting with the oldest record we can find, then follow him as he grows up. We also have a picture, and written on the back is Franklin Roosevelt and family, Thanksgiving. From his photo, we can see his name, and we deduce that he has a wife and at least 2 children. Let's start filling out his pedigree chart with the data that we already know. His first and last name, Franklin Roosevelt. Remember to use a pencil and leave a space for his middle name. We know he has a wife, but we haven't discovered her name yet. Mrs. as a placeholder to remind us to look, but remember her last name is not listed as Roosevelt. Our first record is the New York State Census of 1892. This is important because the federal census of 1890 is not available. A huge fire in Washington, D.C. destroyed most of the records. So the state records are very useful. Here's Franklin, and we find our first clues. His father and mother, their ages, and Franklin's middle initial. And he's 10 in 1892. So doing a little math, that means we deduce he was born about 1882. When you are deducing or making an informed guess, use about in front of the year to show it as a guess. We can enter his parents' information too. Now we're at the mother lode. My favorite record, the U.S. Federal Census. This one is for 1900. Lots of writing. I'm using Ancestry.com to find these records. They highlight Franklin's family in green and his personal information in yellow to make it easier to see. I'm going to split it up some so it's even bigger. Look, now we know the month and year of his birth and the state. We can also see when and where his parents were born, and how long they've been married. There is 20 by his mother and 40 or a mistake by his father. That looks like another mystery to solve. Do you see why I love the census? Let's put down what we have learned. We are a lot closer to Franklin's birth date and place, and his dad is much older than the typical dad. That tells me that maybe this is his second marriage. That's why he said 40 to the census taker. Really, this marriage is 20 years, but his first marriage was probably 20 years too. and his mother is a lot younger than the typical mom. In 1910, Franklin is now old enough to have his own family. Let's split it up again. See? He's 28 and married to Anna E., with a 3-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son, Anna and James. Remember the picture? The son and daughter? But he doesn't look 1 year younger than her. Another mystery to solve. It's time to start Franklin's family group chart, now that we have children for him and his wife. He's the husband in this family. We could start another family group chart with his father as the husband, but you can do that one on your own. We're up to 1930. 20 years has passed since we last saw him. Now he's 48. And do you see what his occupation is? He's the governor of New York. And they have 4 sons. But their daughter Anna is not listed. There's a couple of reasons she's not here now. See if you can guess why. My first guess is that she simply grew up and left home. She would be 24 by now because here is James and he's 23, remember? She was 1 year older than him. Maybe she went to college. Maybe she got married. And maybe she died. If I really wanted to know, I would look for her in her own census listing. Here are 3 new sons, Elliot, Franklin Jr., and John. Remember our photo? I think the boy is possibly John, the baby. But it's still a guess. This is all useful for the family group chart, but not the pedigree chart. So let's look at our next record. The World War II draft card. It does not say that here, but I know that war that happened in the 40s was the Second World War. This is why it's good to know a little about history. Look, see what else you can find that's new information. Franklin is 60 years old, and here is his full birth date, January 30th. And the city he was born in was the city he lived in back in the 1900 census, Hyde Park. Plus, look at his middle name. Now we know it's D for Delano. And look at his address. 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Franklin was the President of the United States in 1942. Let's chart what we have. I Googled the county for Hyde Park, New York. We have a lot of information about Franklin. But now we come to the end of his life. His family gravestone gives us more information, including the middle name of his wife and the years they both died. In the obituary index, it gives us more facts, but also a sad story about how he died. It's the stories that help our ancestors come alive for us. Always look for stories. This one tells us he collapsed while sitting for a portrait. We have a lot of facts about Franklin. We could find a lot more, too, like marriage, place, and date. Isn't it fun to be a detective? This is why I love genealogy so much. Remember to use the genealogical proof standard so when you make discoveries and if someone says prove it, you can. It's now time for action. Start filling out the rest of your pedigree chart as complete as you can. List the sources of where you get the information in the bottom left corner. Thanks for joining us. I hope you had fun with me, Trainer Lori, as we learned about genealogy together. And now it's time for you to go out and find all the information for your family tree, which might take a lifetime, but it's quite an adventure.